best of Redditor updates with quite an infamous incident. What are the trigger warnings? Let's see. Infidelity, internalized homophobia, accusations of homophobia. Trigger warnings have gone too far. You're delegitimizing. Like, what do you mean accusations of homophobia is a trigger warning? Accusations of alleged kissing. I don't know, man. Like, what are we doing at this point anymore with these? My 42F husband, 42M, has informed me he intends to go on a gaycation with his BIL, 35M in Ibiza. How do I handle this? Also, in Ibiza, is this even real?
You sure about that?
Bro, I feel like the Johnny Test intro. Well, what do we make of this? B-I-L, B-I-L. My 42F husband has informed me he intends to go on a gaycation with his BIL in Ibiza. How do I handle this? I really wish I didn't have to make this post, but here goes. Here, I'm gonna tell my most intimate life details on the internet to solicit advice from complete strangers. Of course, the best idea. So me and my husband have been happily married for about 16 years. We both have stable careers, good family life, and are fairly fortunate despite the cost of living racking the UK right now. We have two boys, 15 and 10, and up until this Sunday, thought we had it pretty good. We argue sometimes, of course, but never gotten too bad, and we have a pretty decent sex life with some exploration, but I won't get into that, except for the fact Anyway, long and short is, on Sunday, just after I dropped our boys off at their friends, my husband asked me if we had the house alone, and more importantly, do I have a minute? I said yes, and he sat me down and got out this printed poster for some sort of orgy. Okay. So bro's probably already been cheating, but continue, and started explaining to me the concept of a gaycation. How it's where straight men go to somewhere with sun, sand, and booze, and become gay for the duration of the trip. So bro's already, I'm just gonna say right now, maybe 13 of those years, he's been cheating on you with other men. Now, but that's fine because exactly like as you've said, because it doesn't actually count. Because what happens on the gaycation stays on the gaycation. I was just completely silent and mortified, even more so when he said he was looking into booking a trip to Ibiza next year with his BIL. Oh, that means brother-in-law. Yeah, for the first time, of course. See, the only first time here is the trip to Ibiza. Everything else has been going on. I need him to be clear with me. Is he gay? Because if yes, that's okay, but we need to figure out what happens going forward. I didn't let myself get angry or upset. I was just stunned. I swear to you, this story's not real. It's just, no. He swore up and down how he's not gay and he's 100% attracted to women. Now, listen, I've been banging other men in secluded areas without your information for years. And I want to do it with a cornucopia, if you will, of men to upscale my operations. But I only have eyes for women and more particularly you. And of course, he still loves me and our boys accordingly. Yeah, of course, naturally. So I said, well, do you think you're bi, maybe? And he got very defensive, saying, hell, I need to drop the accusations. If you're enjoying this video, leave a like, subscribe, and check out my Twitch for more. And then this is the beauty of the gaycation. It allows straight men to experience gayness without actually being gay. Now it's like going to an aquarium. Huh? Going to an aquarium. But if you go to an aquarium, you're watching. First of all, you're watching other fish live. So it's not like... It's not like you're... What does that even... What does that mean? That doesn't make sense in any context. And again, he was adamant. Doesn't find men's bodies or genitalia exciting at all. But he needs to experience this, apparently. Needs. It's not at all something there is any interest in any way, shape, or form. But absolutely must go to the gay orgy in a foreign country, though. Right. I said, well, I'm really not comfortable because even if he was bi, this would be explicitly cheating on me. And he got angry and reiterated he's not, because that's the beauty of the gaycation. I ignored him for the rest of the day, but we spoke at tea, where Yes, I'm from the UK.
We spoke at tea time where I again asked him, why does he want to do this so bad if he's not gay? He said how he's interested in how gay men's lives, and that unfortunately, once the gaycation begins, it's simply impossible for a man to resist, and he must surrender himself.
Mind, body, and soul. There's no way it's written. Bro, this has to be manufactured. I really can't put into words how surreal it was because he was speaking so matter-of-factly. He again insists this is a thing that straight men do all the time. And how he's actually doing it a bit late. This reminds me of like those ironic Breaking Bad videos where it's like Skylar is completely the problem. My wife is so controlling and doesn't let me do anything. She's like, I can't even go to Ibiza and have gay orgies while I have a committed, loving marriage with 2 children. She just needs to lighten up a little bit. She's so freaking controlling and doesn't let me have any fun. I just said to him if he's any love for me, then he can't go ahead with this. And if he does, the marriage will be dead. Since then, he's mentioned no more of it, but somehow, and this is what scares me a lot too, that decision genuinely seems to be tearing him up. It's gotta be some man that tears him up. So if it's not someone else, it's gonna be him. He didn't go into work on Monday and only went in half a day yesterday because he told them he just felt too ill and he just looks distraught every time I see him. Has anyone known straight guys to do this and come back and just go back to being straight? Girl, like surely that can't be a thing that happens. I'm so out of my depth here and I just don't know how to even initiate the conversation. For the record, I also haven't mentioned it to his sister yet. I don't know how I'd even break it to her. Thanks for any help. I just don't even want to think. And see, here, first of all, with this advice online stuff, this right here is the problem. If we're assuming this is real, you are platforming the most intimate detail of your private marriage to anonymous strangers on the internet. While this blew up, this has been incredibly sobering, and I think I've now confirmed what I already knew to be the case. See, just wants validation, of course. The marriage is dead one way or another. Correct conclusion, at least. In a way, I was in denial myself about that. I've contacted my SIL, and she initially screamed at me, calling me a liar, and even insinuated I was trying to steal her husband. She rang me back shortly after, apologized, and admitted she was in deep, deep shock. I've asked my parents to look after the boys, and we're going to meet tomorrow to discuss this deeper. I've also texted my husband and told him he will need to make alternative accommodation arrangements, but he will not be sleeping here tonight. Thank you for all the kind words, especially Champion Flight. Especially Champion Flight, who really gave me the good dose of reality I needed. Like, this is exactly my point. This just did not happen, and it's just all like a theatrical psyop because these people are so bored and have nothing to do with their lives that they're just writing interactive Wattpad fan fictions. Apparently you can't gaykate without straights. So here's my question is, are the gays on a gaycation? Because the gaycation is somehow for the straights, but you need the gay component for the gaycation to feature, but it's for straights only in terms of benefits somehow. The first fanfiction was a massive success, and so now we have this second one coming out. So when I last posted, I'd contacted my husband to tell him he wouldn't be staying at home tonight and a bag would be waiting for him. As you can imagine, we argued quite badly. We've had arguments in the past, but I've genuinely never seen him have such a childish tantrum before, screaming about how I just don't understand the gaycation, and insinuating I'm actually homophobic because I refuse to allow him to participate in this cultural exchange. They'll be exchanging something for sure, like saliva. A lot of you said to ask him if it'd be acceptable if the roles were in reverse, and I did say would it be acceptable if I went and slept with other guys during that week. Like clockwork, he was very angry and offended, saying it's completely different because a gaycation means nothing, and what happens on the gaycation stays on the gaycation, so it doesn't actually count. Whereas I'd just be straight up cheating. Here is the follow-up. Introduce the les voyage. Anyways, well, I turned it around on him. No, but you see, what happens in Manchester stays in Manchester. He went all quiet and then started crying, admitting the thought of me sleeping with another man is destroying his heart, but relationships need sacrifices. So agreed, well in tears, that when he goes on the gaycation, I'll get 1 week in Manchester to do whatever I want. He doesn't want me to, but that's fair in a twisted way, he supposed. I told him to get out of my house. About an hour later, I got rang up by his mum. When I finally got my composure back, I just said, ask your son about the gaycation. Obviously, at first she got angry, but I said, no, just ask him about the gaycation. He'll explain. But she called me a joke and hung up. Holy based. Later on, getting into the evening, got another phone call from her in floods of tears. Floods of tears, of course. Thanks for the Reddit gold, kind stranger. She was very apologetic, and I told her she doesn't need to be the one to apologize. And then everyone stood up and clapped. This is really just creative writing practice, isn't it? I swear that's just what it is, because if you went out and said this is a fictional story, that you would actually be like critiqued for so much of this being god-awful. Told them to be there for their daughter because it sounds like brother-in-law is involved. Go to text my husband after the phone call, which was all weirdly rambly, saying about how I'd abused the gaycation to destroy his marriage and destroy his life, and again insinuated I and his parents were homophobic. Told him we'll talk when he grows up and blocked his number. Bye-bye, bitch. I took a day off work myself to have the locks changed this morning, so I haven't yet met with sister-in-law. She was in such a state and has taken this far, far worse than I have. We're going to maybe try tomorrow to talk, but we did talk over the phone and I eavesdropped on the conversation with her husband. She made him come home, told him there was an emergency, and just said to him, "You please explain what a gaycation is." Of course, what you would ask. He just sat her down and explained that a gaycation is a new thing where straight men go to gay hotspots and participate in gay sex acts, but it doesn't count because there's no investment. And because what happens on the gaycation stays on the gaycation. This is so funny because it's like, you know, socks on memes, and they're just trying to reiterate that like 60 times. The whole time, sister-in-law is in tears as he just calmly bats off the same points my husband did about how it doesn't count. And he even did the whole, it's impossible to resist, you must surrender or be destroyed, of course. I really don't want to go into what was discussed for her sake, but it did become very apparent to me that the BIL is into and at times conflated that with the concept. First time chat from the chatbot under the username of Costly Crotch. I bet it was for 42. Very true. Thank you so much, best viewers, for the contribution to the chat there. You don't really come in clutch ever, but that time that was premium. Thank you so much. There was this utterly surreal moment where your sister-in-law is just trying to wrap her head around, while also in floods of tears. And he explains so genuinely, so matter-of-factly, that for most men, the gaycation is either a one-time or annual thing, like a pilgrimage that all straight men must go on. But some men go on the vacation for years, and others simply never return because they use hypnosis and mind control to be totally feminized into a state of permanent pseudo-gayness. She said in disbelief, "Surely if you're taking it up willingly because you want to, that makes you gay." And he said, "No, because that's the beauty of the gaycation. You can do all this gay stuff, but you don't interact with the wider gay life experience." Wait, which is what exactly? And there were more insinuations of homophobia. Well, that marriage is dead too, I suppose. The whole ordeal ended when she said to him he has a choice to make, and he said no. He doesn't need to make this choice because the beauty of the... at this point, it's just kind of getting repetitive, you feel me? She said that's not the choice. The choice is whether he's leaving the house that night or she is. Only good thing he did was leave. Me and sister-in-law spoke about it after that, and I'm just... What exactly did we do to have our lives destroyed in such an abrupt, bizarre, embarrassing way? Edit. Spoke to other sister-in-law and gave her a skimmed-down version of it. She asked her husband... And thankfully he was deeply confused, but then mentioned about 2 years ago at a birthday party, he was approached by my husband and brother-in-law about signing up to some online boot camp around BDSM cross-dressing. He assumed they were taking the piss out of him, so he told them to F off and never really thought of it again. Well, but see, here's the thing, though. What my theory is that the original person either participated in this just on their own or wants to be a self-insert on either side of this equation. And I explained like the two types of person that could be. And there was the third option where it's just like, oh, this is what I indulged in, and so I'm now like imagining this. Could now have more insane things happened all the time. Of course, there's just so much in this that tips me off that it's not the case. If you enjoyed, we will be coming out with all types of content in the coming weeks and really being active with this channel, so be sure to stick around and check out my Twitch as well for the hype moments and aura